Welcome to another CEO Wisdom podcast. We have Issac Elnekave with us today. Not sure if I pronounced that right.
You nailed
Isaac,
it.
cool, perfect. Glad that I did it and proud of myself because my brain is getting foggy. It's the end of the day. We had 14 interviews, but the best was for last, I guess, because your background is super fascinating, to be honest. For those that don't know, Isaac is CEO at One Question. He has an interesting story to tell, but it's not his first stint, Managing director at Bagel House. We're gonna start with that. Skinscarestore.com.au, a pharmacy and technology group, then Ziva.co, Tide Foundation, Parenthood Ventures, and finally that led to One Question. So we're going to start with that background. But before we do, this podcast is brought to you by podbuyer.com. If you want to start scale, be invited to a podcast like this one, even find sponsors, which are quite helpful to monetize podcasting. Podcasting is great if you want to learn from folks like Isaac, basically for free. If you want to build a community, get subscribers, get leads, and even get clients from podcasting, podbuyer.com. Isaac, welcome to the pod. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself and your background?
Thanks. Great to be here. Super excited to share and to learn, actually, to listen back to what some of the other CEOs had to say. Look, Charles, my story is, I think, not unique, to be honest with you, within founders. I mean, we are guys that are constantly almost addicted to change and to building. I've been an entrepreneur all my life. I think there was a period of about 3 months where I was employed, and this is coincidentally after I actually exited Bagel House, which we grew to be the largest bagel manufacturer and distributor and retail chain here in Australia. We exited that to George Weston Foods, which is Australia's largest bakery conglomerate. And as a result of that, I had to sort of was meant to spend a couple of years bedding down the business in their organization. But I lasted about 3 months as an employee. I think being a founder is sort of hardwired in my DNA. And to be honest, it really has never been about the industry that I was in. It's always been, I think, about the team that I was able to build and our mission at that particular time. So my story, my background, and you've already sort of explained it, but yeah, I built Australia's largest bagel bakery and retail chain, and from there I got into skincare.
Night and day.
Yeah, completely night and day. And I have to thank one of my very, very good friends for getting me into skincare. He sort of gave me a call and said, "Hey, you've got to get into this business." And I remember saying to him, "Man, I just finished 10 years in a bagel bakery. I don't know the first thing about skincare. You need a chick with an IT degree." And he said, no, you really don't. And I remember getting into that, and that was a fascinating experience because we had gotten into online retailing of skincare products and of professional skincare products at a time where it was really just the beginning of the e-commerce boom. So we had gotten into that back in 2007, and it was fascinating to see how quickly the industry was growing from an online e-commerce perspective. So we were quite lucky. We got into it at a time when the river was running quickly, and we just had to swim a little bit faster than everyone else. And that was a rocket ship. We sort of gone from 0 to 100 in about 3 years and exited that business.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the first and the second business, any difference? Like how life-changing was it?
Yeah, look, I mean, the first business here in Australia, Bagel House, was, it was a long gig. It was 10 years in the making, and it should not have been. And I learned a lot from that venture. We had, and actually, interestingly, we had during those 10 years theoretically sold that business 4 times to the same ultimate buyer. But what I mean by 4x is we had sold the business, and we had gotten to terms on the business, and then the managing director on the other side had either resigned or was let go of or was switched, and we had to start the whole process over again with the new one. And that had happened.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
4x over 4 years. And that really taught me an incredibly valuable lesson, which is you can tread water for a little while, but you simply cannot tread water indefinitely. You cannot stand still for nobody, because it will ultimately destroy your business, and it'll take it
And
apart
yourself.
brick by brick, and yourself. You're right. Yeah.
Wow.
That was an incredible
So
lesson.
how did the exit feel when it finally happened?
It was difficult to celebrate it. I think that's what it was, because we had been there 4x. We'd been on the high, we'd been on the low, we'd been on the high, we'd been on the low. And when it finally happened, it was just like, oh, okay, we finished.
Yeah, it's like I deserve this, It's like, I fully understand that mindset. And the second exit, it was quicker. Was it as lucrative?
It was more lucrative. And I think, the first one would have been lucrative at the 6-year mark, and became a bit less so over time. But then, we were in it so far that it was difficult to sort of find our way back out after 4 years of negotiating and renegotiating with one managing director and the next one. So yeah, speed is your friend. And if you can't have speed, then if you're not able to go quickly, you really need to reevaluate if your trajectory and your decision making is sound.
Right. And that skincare business you exited, had a fun time with the money that didn't last too long because you're addicted to startups and the entrepreneurship game. And then you went into pharmacy technology group.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. And that went into pharmacy technology group. And as an entrepreneur, I think something that's probably fairly common. We have successes and we have failures. And we probably have more failures than we've had successes.
Oh yeah.
And for me, PTG was a bit of a mistake in hindsight. Australia is the size of the US with a population of the Los Angeles basin. So it becomes very difficult to amortize products and services, small products and services, across a country that is so geographically large. So we entered into the pharmacy space because, technologically speaking, it was a bit late in adoption, and we felt that we would be able to provide new technology into the space, which we did. But we were not able to do that fast enough in a large market, and that ultimately was a failure for us.
Sometimes I look at my failure with if I would have to do it again, but this is not the right lens, At this point, it's like, what did I learn from it, and how can I help others not to reproduce these mistakes? So, what would be your answer to these questions?
I mean, it's I think it's the same answer for just about every business, which is, before you get in, test the waters. And when I say test, I mean critically test it. Take a look at it, have people that are dispassionate look at the market, look at your business model, and then get in slowly until you get a little bit of traction. If you get traction, double down, double down, double down. We didn't do that. We jumped in. I knew very little about the pharmacy space, so I brought on board partners who were specialized in there. And I assumed that they also had some of the skills that we would need from a business perspective. And whilst they really did, they didn't have the scale-up skills that are so necessary in a startup. So we did really well in a very local market, but when we started to expand, we ran into a lot of issues.
Right. And lessons learned, I guess, for Ziva. You started a marketing platform for IoT, which is another completely different niche. How did you get the idea, and how did that one do?
Wow. Ziva is a fascinating story. We started just at the time when, if you recall, fit bands were just, all the rage. And there is a bit of a nexus between Ziva and pharmacies, because what we were looking to do from the pharmacy space was, okay, how can we market to people who are active, or who are inactive? And so we were looking for data points on people's physical activity, and their health. And so we thought, wow, there's no platform that allows us to target people based on their physical activities. And so we built Ziva, which effectively is a platform that connected all types of wearable devices. And that platform then was able to get your activity levels, and then provide that as a marketing platform so other businesses can target individuals based on activity or inactivity or health levels. And that actually really took off, which, and interestingly enough, that is what led into Tide. The challenge for us with Ziva was that we had kicked that off just at the time that GDPR came on board, and suddenly privacy became a really big concern. Legal privacy became a big concern. So we, working with enterprise clients, they wanted to ensure that those consumers who had connected into the Ziva platform had their privacy protected. Otherwise, these very same enterprises would be in breach of the GDPR. And so we had tried to figure out a way to make that happen. And within Ziva, I met one of the most talented CTOs I've ever run across, Yuval Herzog, and he came up with an absolutely brilliant idea. And I remember talking to him after speaking to an enterprise client, and I said, we have to solve this privacy piece, otherwise we're not going to get any clients. And he said, I've got a great idea. Let's just take all of their personal details and remove it from our database. And I remember saying to him, wait, hang on a second. How is that a great idea? I mean, technologically speaking, that's great. We're protected, but then what do we have to sell? We have nothing to sell if we can't, if we don't have the consumer's details.
Okay.
And he said, no, we'll take them out and we will give the consumers the only key to unlock that data. So we won't have the key within the business. So even if we get breached, no one will be able to unlock the data. And then what we'll tell our consumers is, hey, we've got a company that wants to market to you, but they don't know who you are. If you're prepared to share your key with them directly, then they're prepared to provide you with a reward. And that's how Tide was born. Tide was born as a business whose mission it is to protect the personal data of consumers, and to ensure that even when businesses are hacked, because most of us will be hacked at some stage, that there are no personal details on your platform, and no way for a hacker to access that.
And how does that one make money?
How does Tide make money? Tide is a platform that is aimed at enterprise businesses. So it is a cybersecurity solution. And by doing so, it provides that level of security to organizations, knowing that if and when they do get hacked, personal details of their consumers do not become available. And that's Tide's clients, enterprise players.
And how does that make money?
Oh, they charge, Tide charges businesses on a subscription and on a per use basis.
Okay. So like $300 a month subscriptions, or?
Well, I think that the business model really depends on the number of different users on the platform for the enterprise, and on the level of data that is transmitted. So I think that it really becomes that the commercial aspect becomes a question for the folks over at Tide. I exited Tide, so I co-founded Tide and I exited the business to start actually One Question back in 2021 or 2022.
It's pretty cool. And One Question, tell us that story. It's you. We can make a movie out of your startup life, by the way.
I think you could make a movie out of most founders' startup life. But yeah, One Question is actually a great story. I've got three daughters, and my two youngest ones at the time were 15 and 13. And we were in the middle of COVID. I had just exited Tide, and we were in lockdown. And my youngest at 13 still did not know her times tables, which killed my wife and I. Absolutely, it was. And we had tried so many different things to get her to actually sit down and study it. But on the flip side, she was the queen of TikTok. She could TikTok with the best of them. In fact, all of my girls were just glued to their devices. And so in the middle of COVID, during lockdown one night, my wife turned to me and she said, wouldn't it be great if Lissy, it's my youngest daughter's name, needed to answer a times table question before she can get onto TikTok? And I remember saying to her, that is a brilliant idea. Let's go ahead and download the app. I'm in. And my wife came back to me couple hours later and she said, there is no app. And I remember doing the middle-aged male techie thing and saying, move over, babe, I'll find it for you. And of course I didn't find it. So we built it. And One Question was designed to solve the unproductive screen time problem with kids. With One Question installed, kids earn recreational screen time by engaging with educational content. So, think of it as micro lessons. Micro lessons typically made up of a 1 minute or less TikTok style lesson by a teacher that talks about anything from sustainability, diversity, growth mindset for kids, times tables. And followed by a series of multiple choice questions the kids answer to earn their recreational screen time.
Which is really smart. And then what happened?
Well, we started off just with the times tables, and that was a really dirty alpha version. I think all alpha versions are dirty. We popped it onto my daughter's phone, and she said to me, the first thing she said to me was, "Dad, this is a dog act." Those of you that are not in Australia, a dog act is, it's like when you do something really treacherous. And I said, well, it might be a dog act, but let's give it a go. 2 weeks later, she nailed the times tables. And I remember my head just coming off my shoulders going, what the hell? And I looked into the back of the app and realized she was answering 27 questions a day. Like she had wanted to get into TikTok 27 times a day. And that was when I had our first aha moment. It's not rocket science. All we did was take a subject, convert it down into micro learning moments, and delivered it at a time when the child was absolutely engaged because she wanted to get into TikTok. So a couple things popped out of that for me. One is that in almost all of my businesses prior, engagement with our customers was probably the most elusive and expensive component of that business. But within One Question, we had guaranteed programmatic engagement. Kids wanted to get into their recreational apps, so we knew that they were going to spend time with us. And so our question was how best to use that time. And so we built, we thought, well, we need to make sure that we can create as much content as possible, because once my daughter had learned the times tables, she really had no reason to be on the One Question app. And so we thought, well, let's expand. And then we built out math for grades 1 through 8. And Charles, that only took us about 3 weeks to do. And it was really cheap. And I remember at the end of that going, wow, this is just a commodity. We have no defensibility. We really need to figure out a model that provides us with defensibility and allows us to scale. And we ended up landing on a marketplace where teachers on one side were creating the educational content, and parents on the other side were choosing which content their kids engage with to earn their recreational screen time. The teachers also ended up being our go-to-market channel. We shared revenue with the teachers, and that was one of those times where you go, bang, we were getting traction. And we were off and running. In February of this year, we had about 450 teachers on the platform. We were delivering almost 30,000 questions a day to kids. Things were looking great. We were gearing up for our seed round. And then ChatGPT 4 came out. And Charles, it destroyed our business overnight. Actually, I can't say overnight because it took me 4 days. I remember 4 days after ChatGPT 4 came out, I sent an email to the team, and I basically said, guys, it's over. Our business now is uninvestable. And it became uninvestable overnight. It was unbelievable. And the reason, a lot of people ask me, why did you say it's uninvestable? The concept of kids earning screen time, it still makes sense, and you're right, it does. But generative AI can slice and dice and parse the world's information into micro learning moments, and it can deliver it at exactly the right time, and it can deliver it in a personalized way that is very different for every user. And so suddenly we had gone from that moat, that area of defensibility for the business being our teachers and our go-to-market, to, well, that's not necessary. And if that's what you're doing as a business, I can't invest in you because generative tech will be able to do it better, faster, and a lot cheaper. And so we were really stuffed at that stage.
Even 3.5 was
Yeah.
quite good, fully understood that a kid can basically answer all the questions instantly on ChatGPT on any device.
Yeah.
So what did you do from there? Because the idea is pretty genius. It's pretty good, but what happens from there? If you're uninvestable.
Well, this is where some of the founders that have been in my life that have really inspired me. These are the guys that I turn to, and I said, guys, what the hell am I going to do? As you said, Charles, the idea is great. The team was sensational. We were literally on a high, and then the floor was pulled out from under us, and so we did what any other startup team can do. We pivoted hard into generative AI, and we said, well, we're just about out of cash because we're about to go for our seed raise, but we've got a platform, and we've got users, and we've got a great idea, and now we also have the gold standard of content, which is something that we did not have before in terms of having to manage, your teachers and the content that they created. And so we pivoted into generative AI, and we spent a lot of time in that space. And as we started to introduce some generative AI features into our app, we had our shareholders, who historically have been, our very early adopters and the guys that we test out our tech and our approach on, come back to us after seeing some of these generative AI solutions that we were implementing, and our shareholders said, hey, can you help us with our own business? And if you've been following generative AI, you know that it is as impactful as the internet, and some would argue as impactful as humans discovering fire. And you'll find me in that camp. And so, and so every business is and will be impacted by generative AI. And as a team that got into it so early on and developed IP in that space, we started to think, well, we don't have cash. We do have potential clients. They're our own shareholders, guys that are looking for generative AI solutions in their business. And so we started to take on some consulting gigs. Initially, it was just consulting gigs so that we can, cover the bills so that we can have time to work on the One Question app. But as time evolved and as Gen AI evolved and as our IP increased, the projects that we were doing became larger and larger. And one client introduced us to the next client. And actually today, Charles, it's funny that we've got the timing like this, because when you and I originally spoke, it was almost a month ago. Today, we're actually taking 1Q Labs .ai out of stealth. And today we'll be announcing the release of 1Q Labs, which is what we pivoted into. And 1Q Labs is a generative AI studio where we partner with our clients to create generative AI solutions, not just for them, but for the market that they're in. And it is a really interesting story. We've gone from, being ready for our seed raise to running out of cash and knowing that we won't have any investors, to where we are today, where we are not looking to raise. We don't need to raise money because we've got consulting projects that are more than covering our costs, and we're able to deploy generative AI startups. One Question, the app, is now simply a portfolio company of 1Q Labs.
It's a hell of a story. What's next for you? What are your goals this year?
Look, our goals this year really is to harness the deflationary force of generative AI, which I think, for me, is probably my burning platform. I think, so many people look at generative AI and go, wow, it's going to make our life great, or it's going to eliminate us as human beings. You've got one of two extreme camps. And for me, I'm sort of
both
sitting
are right.
somewhere. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And I look at it and go, wow, it is such an insanely deflationary force. And yet, if you adopt that technology early on, then it becomes your own internal moat, your own way of actually creating sustainable ARR. And if you do not adopt the tech early on, you simply, and I know this is an extremist position, but you will not be there because this technology is game changing. It literally changes the game, and you'll find yourself playing that game alone. And so, for me, this year is purely focused on looking at the industries that we're operating in and taking a look at models that bring in deflationary forces and trying to figure out how do you survive and prosper in that environment.
You and I were going to do round 2 solely about AI. And until then, where could we find out more information about you?
Yeah, well, I mean, for us, as I said, today we're coming out of stealth. So head on over to 1QLabs.ai. Drop us a note. You'll find us on LinkedIn in a few hours. And we'd love to talk. We'd love to talk specifically to those leaders and founders in businesses where it's clear to everyone that AI is changing the game. And if you share that mindset, together we can do some amazing things.
There you go. And I am Charles Cormier, host of CEO Wisdom Podcast. If you want to start scale, be invited to podbuyer.com.